way better role. Way better. Like, love it. I'm like,
Ready?
okay.
This is Haley.
And this is Bailey. You're listening to Unleashed. Today we are talking about the lessons we have learned in our 20s so far, and I'm 25 and Haley is 26. I think it'd be so much fun.
I thought you were gonna
say
look
the
like
wrong
you were
age.
about to be. Yeah, I thought you were about to say the wrong age.
No, I know your age, but I did think about it. But I think it'd be so fun to do this at the end of our 20s again. Like, have the same conversation, do the same topic.
So when I'm in my 30s,
right.
and you're
Yeah,
in
like
your 20s
when you're
still?
30 and I'm 29.
My mom always said this quote to me growing up, and I just like, it stuck to me, and I thought it'd be really interesting to share. It was, when you're 20, you care what everyone thinks. When you're 40, you stop caring what everyone thinks. When you're 60, you realize no one was thinking about you in the first place. It's like, so why can't we just be like, we're 60 right now and realize nobody cares what the freaking frack you're doing? Just like go with it, go with your life, and realize no one gives a flip.
I've heard that quote before, and it's so funny because I feel like that's everything in life. Like when we're little, everyone's like, I want to grow up. I can't wait to grow up. And it's just like you don't really realize until you're in that position or at that age that time, like, nobody cared, or I didn't need to grow up so fast. But it's hard in those moments to think, like in your 20s especially, like, or even in high school. I feel like that's a big age where you're like, you think everybody cares so much about what you're doing and is so judgmental. But really, it's like, as you get more confident, I think the older you get, the more you realize, like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have been caring so much.
Yeah,
about
it's like when
all of
you're like
that.
taking a picture out in public and then people are staring at you, and you get like so like nervous, and you're like, everyone's staring at me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, who cares? Like, I'm not even gonna think twice about this in like 10 minutes. Like, no one's gonna. And worst case scenario, you show up on influencers in the wild on Instagram. Who cares?
That is a big fear of mine. I'm gonna end up on that. I'll be like,
I'll be sure to send all of your pictures that I take if you take pictures.
That's great.
Wild. If you're not familiar with influencers in the wild, it's an Instagram account that is the public's pictures of influencers taking pictures in the public. It's actually really entertaining, and people do some crazy things, but I know it's every influencer's fear to be on that page and be made fun of. But it's a good thing they can't tag you in it because they don't know who you are. I mean, maybe they could if you were really big, but I mean, for the most part, you wouldn't be known.
Yeah. That is good. That's true. I feel like something I've really learned is how important it is to prioritize your health. I feel like when you're younger, you don't think about it as much. And as you get older, it becomes more important. And that's something that I've seen such a difference when I'm taking care of myself, how much better I feel. I feel like we're both pretty on it, I would say, with our health. Like, I'm still learning so much and I can be on it in so many other ways, but I feel like I'm actually becoming more interested in being on top of it. And I've realized how important it is, if that comes to getting IVs, doing, like, taking vitamins. I feel like there's just getting your sleep, working out, like all those things. I feel like kind of
There's a
fall in the
lot of
same
moving
category.
factors to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I feel like health kind of falls in, obviously it falls into working out. And I feel like that's something, like, I'd work out, but I didn't realize how much better I felt and how much more I was myself when I was consistently working out. And I feel like it's so easy to fall off of that stuff. But when you really look at how important it is to prioritize your health, it makes a big difference.
It's true. I really didn't figure out what it takes to like have a good healthy lifestyle until like the last maybe 3 or 4 years, because there's so many different things online and so many people tell you so many different things, like, don't do this, don't do that, you have to do this. And it's like, oh my goodness, no, you don't have to be so extreme. You don't have to be keto. You don't have to go Whole30. You don't have to, get exactly 8 hours of sleep every night. I mean, obviously it's about balance and moderation in all things. Like, I don't think that there's one or the other, unless you have like a severe like health like concern, or like, I don't know, something that would, you have to do that. But it comes down to making sure that you're doing what's best for your body and feeling healthy at the end of the day, and feeling confident in your own skin. And there's not just one way to do that. I really think that a lot of people think, oh, well, I did this, I lost 20 pounds doing blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, great, that worked for you and that's awesome. But it's everything. And I also think this is something with health. Not healthy lifestyle involves weight loss. A lot of people associate having a healthy lifestyle to weight loss, and that is not the case. A healthy lifestyle can be mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. There's so many different aspects to it, and it's not just about, how thin or thick your skin is.
Definitely. I think like the biggest things for me were actually didn't have to do with that. They were probably therapy, which is my mental health. That was a huge thing that I started to prioritize. Acupuncture, that made a big difference in how I felt. And feeling good mentally and physically makes a big difference in how you can show up as a person every day. And I think people can get so caught up, like you said, in different things, it becomes overwhelming and stressful. And I think that's something I've even learned as I've done it is baby step into it. Start with one thing. What works for you? Okay, that didn't work. Try something else. And I think being okay with stuff not working when you're trying it until you find what works for you.
I love that. I also think you said acupuncture, so I'm just starting to try that and I'm learning a lot about it. Holy moly. Like if you haven't tried acupuncture, try it. I've only done it once, and guys,
Yeah,
there's some serious benefits to it. You have back pain, acupuncture. You have morning sickness and you're pregnant, acupuncture. You can't see very well, acupuncture. Like literally there are so many different things you can do with acupuncture. It's amazing. I literally could talk about health benefits for things I've learned for so long. I think honestly that's probably been my biggest, if I had to pick one topic of lessons I've learned, that would be my top 3.
Yeah, it's huge. I've been doing acupuncture for 3 years now, maybe a little over 3 years. And it's just like crazy how big of a difference it makes. We should do a podcast just on health stuff.
Yeah, we should.
Like just what we've learned, because I think we're learning as we go. And I think that's what's so unique about it. It's not like we're experts in the topic, but we can share our experiences.
I love that. I think that's a great idea. One of the things we were talking about was also detox. And I think that can go along with health, but not just like, oh, I'm going to detox my body with this cleanse. No, it's like you can detox products, people, and like your priorities. Like what is, worth your energy in your life and what maybe is taking too much of your energy. And I think that's really interesting. What do you think?
I think detoxing is so important if it comes to people in your life. So important. We've had podcasts on that. We've talked about struggling with friends, all of that, relationships. Go listen to those podcasts because we talk a lot about that. And I think products is so important because I've actually started to use more natural products and I've been able to actually see a huge difference. Like I'm going to use face cleansers and things like products like that as an example. Like I was breaking out so bad, couldn't figure it out, started using more natural products that worked for me. And yeah, I still have breakouts here and there because that's normal, but like my skin overall is so much better. And it's really like looking at what are you putting in your hair? Is that good for you? Because it gets absorbed into your body. You're putting it on your head. When you put it on
lotion.
your skin, what is it? Lotion.
That's
your
skin.
Absorbed.
Yeah, your skin is your largest organ, and it takes, I think, it's either 8 or 26 seconds for it to absorb into your bloodstream. That's how long it takes. And
yeah, and that's
people don't
huge.
understand that like those chemicals in your body or in those products absorb into your body, and people don't see that because it takes consistent usage of that product to wear on your body, and then all of a sudden they're coming out and they're like, I don't feel good or something's off, and it's like, well,
headaches
maybe
can come
look at
from
your
that.
product.
Random things. Yeah.
So true.
I really think we should do a podcast. I think it'd be so much fun to even put maybe like a question box up and like chat with our audience about this and do a podcast on different things like this that we've learned and share our experience with it.
Detox your pantry and your bathroom.
Oh, food.
And
yeah.
Your products.
Food.
Yeah.
What you clean with. Oh, we could go on and on. What you put on the floor because you put your feet on it, your dog walks through it and they lick their paws.
And they lick the floor when they see food on the ground. I use vinegar. Yeah. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, that's
vinegar and
great.
water.
Like instead of, simple. Like,
well, what actually made me do that was the pandemic because all the cleaning products were gone. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I was looking up like cleaning products DIY and I was learning about all these side effects from all these toxic cleaners anyway. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so anytime, it's funny when I walk into, I don't know, a public facility or restroom or whatever, like I don't care what they use, obviously, but I'm like, whoa, that is strong chemical smell because I don't use that anymore. So I'm not used to it. And I'm more susceptible to getting headaches because I'm like not used to all those strong smells.
It's so crazy how much of a difference it makes. Stuff in your yard. But we could go on and on about this for sure.
So okay, Bailey, you said you were going to fight me on this one. I think this is hilarious. I said one of the things I've realized in my 20s, Snapchat is dead. And you said you're going to fight me on this.
Okay, I said I agree. Like, I don't use Snapchat. I remember Evan and I first started dating when we were 21. So we were in our 20s. And I remember using Snapchat for the first like 2 months of our relationship. And then we never really used it again after that. And I feel like right around then I noticed people stopped using it. But then we went to a music festival. I think, we went to Stagecoach. And everyone around us was Snapchatting. And I literally looked at Evan and I was like, are we old now? Like, we don't use
Bailey,
Snapchat.
if you're asking if you're old and you're at Stagecoach, the answer is no, because the old people are at home in bed at 9 p.m. That's me. No, you're not old. You're
but I was just like, I was just like, why do we not use Snapchat? But I keep seeing people using it. They're like, oh, we have a Snapchat streak. I'm like, really? I don't even think I have the app anymore. I might have kept it actually just for the memories to pop up.
I
over
still
the
have
years, but that's
Snapchat
it.
for sure, but I don't open it. I actually had a goal this year to not Snapchat, because I just didn't feel like it was contributing to anything in my life, and it was just one thing I just didn't need, and so I've detoxed Snapchat from my life.
We need feedback on this. Do you use Snapchat? We need to
Yes,
know. if
there's
this
nothing
is
wrong
a
with it.
thing.
It's just I
No,
don't
not
think
at
that
all.
it's no, not at all. It's just like one of those things. I'm like, there's so many different social media apps out there. It's like really, I'm
There's so
good.
many.
And
Yeah,
besides, if
there's
I
so
did
many.
Snapchat Bryce, it would be like something so weird and random. I just text it to him now. Just like,
Yeah.
here you go.
I mean, yeah. Maybe that's what happens too.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, on a little bit more of a serious note, I guess this can kind of fall into embracing it, but embracing change. You can embrace the change with Snapchat, but embracing change, that's not what it actually is, but embracing change overall is so huge. And I think that's something I've learned. I think embracing also, people get such a timeline in their head, or like embracing that things are just going to happen, embrace the change and enjoy the process. And that's something I've learned so much, especially more recently, like as I've gotten older. It's just enjoy the change, enjoy the process, because everything's going to work out even if it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. Have you heard of angel numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so I can't remember if it's 4 or 5, but one of them for my like you do like a calculation of like you take your birthday and you add every number up. So like if your birthday is, I don't know, March 7th, you do 0 plus 3 plus 0 plus 7 and then plus the year. You get the point. And then you take like let's say the number's 31. And then you add 3 plus 1 and then whatever number that is, you get like your angel number. And I looked up mine a few days ago and mine was change. My word was change. I think it
Really?
was 4 or 5. Yeah. And so that's super interesting. It said that life will constantly be like evolving and changing. And I feel like that's kind of true for everyone. But I was like, that's really interesting that that's the one that I got right now.
Look, it's crazy. Like, look back a few years ago. Like, I had somebody ask me, I don't know when it was, that they're like, could you have, actually, it might have even been Evan or someone in my family, but they were like, could you have ever pictured your life looking this way? There's literally no way I would have thought this was going to be my life. Like a few years ago, I would have said, I'm going to settle down. I'm going to live, like a very like 9 to 5, like all that. My life is so different. Like go to 9 to 5, have a house, like, do the.
And now you're literally leaving for Europe in like an hour.
Yeah, we literally booked our tickets a day and a half before. Evan literally
Billy's
looked
running
at me.
around. Trying to
I
get
am.
everything done.
Evan
And then she's
looked
like,
at me on
podcast in 20. Podcast in
Yeah, I was
30.
Literally, Evan looked at me and he was like, on Thursday, he was like, or Wednesday, hey, do you want to leave for Europe on Friday? And I was like, okay, I'm not ready, but yeah, sure, let's go. And it's like those kind of things I would have never pictured. And if I wasn't okay with embracing the change all the time,
Uh-huh.
I would be missing out on so many amazing opportunities. And I think that's something you really
That's
have
a really good
you start to
perspective.
realize as you get older.
I like that. Yeah, it's a good perspective. And I mean, though it doesn't make it easier sometimes, obviously, but I think things usually work itself out. I mean,
They do.
I think you
Even if it
also
doesn't
can't
feel like
expect the
it.
world to like, the world isn't always against you. I feel like people have a perspective that the world's against them, and it's not. It's about the efforts you put into it. And just because you're putting effort doesn't mean it's always going to come back in your favor. That's just how life is. But it definitely, usually 90% of the time, I said it works itself out.
I think being positive, like even in those really hard moments, how do you look at the positive in it? And yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes there's not much positive, but you have like it's always going to work out. And I think that's something like you said, a lot of people think the world is against them. And I've noticed people that do think that things just keep happening. Because usually how it goes, I feel like you see is like when things are really good, things are really good. And then when things are hard, things are really hard. It seems to be that pattern. I see it over and over talking to people. But it's, can you get out of that hard? Like, can you change your perspective and get yourself to the other side? Because once you start thinking everything's against me, it does start to become, you put that energy out there and I don't know what happens, but it starts to happen that way, I feel like.
I totally agree. I think yeah. I mean, embrace change. That's quality. I think that's just a life lesson in general too, not just your 20s. I think you kind of always learn
Yeah,
to go with the flow on that. All right, this one's a
definitely.
good one. I love this one. There's nothing wrong with watching the Kardashians. There
We
was
love
such
the
a taboo
Kardashians.
thing on the yeah, there was such a taboo like, "Oh, you watch the Kardashians?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah. Yeah, I do." And I look forward to it every Wednesday. I have
We had a
my
family night
notifications
watching
on.
it the other night.
We have
We waited till
parties.
9.
There's nothing wrong with that. I hate how people can get so judgmental of it. I don't think it's as taboo anymore because I think it's gotten more normal. But I mean, holy moly, there was so much crap surrounded by watching the Kardashians that for when their first show came out. And Kim was just kind of becoming famous. I mean, she was very diva-like, but you really see them grow as a family. And obviously you only see what they allow you to see. But if you watch their show, they're not these crazy people that are in the light for the drama. I don't know. I give them the benefit of the doubt. I give all celebrities the benefit of the doubt just because
It's not an
you
easy
can't believe
lifestyle either.
no. I mean, your life is public and every aspect. That's hard. I mean, there's things
And
I don't even like
what's
sharing. I can't
yeah,
imagine
for
your
sure.
most
With
personal stories in the world, and they learn
yeah,
to embrace that. Embrace the
sounds
change.
so stressful. And like they keep I think what's so impressive is they're building so much and
Uh-huh.
like they could just stop it where they're at, but they're doing so much. And I just think it's cool. It's like everybody's life is so different. And yeah, maybe that life isn't for us or we wouldn't do what they do, but it's cool to watch. It's fun to watch. It gives us conversations to, like talk about. And
Mhm.
I could not imagine putting my life out there like that. I feel like the way we put our life out there in like a very, very, very small form of what they do is
Mhm.
already like perfect for me because it's like I could not imagine the things I struggle with being out there and then being used against me because that has to be
Totally.
so
As an
hard.
insecurity. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I read this thing the other day, and this kinda goes into something else that I learned in my 20s too with it, but so people are like, "Oh my gosh, they have so much money, they don't they spend money on stuff that's so stupid," and it's like people get so caught up in the things they have and the materialism of it, and I'm like, "Why does that matter?" Because what I was saying, though, is the thing I read the other day is wealthy people, like Kardashian levels, like they live it's a different world that they live. I mean, I read this thing that said Kylie Jenner had 3 Cartier bracelets on, which are equivalent to $42,000, which for a normal everyday person, that's equivalent to like a $15 bracelet for us. That's what it was. Like that it's a different world. But someone said when you have access to that kind of money, and obviously depending on the person, you have the ability to help more people than you ever could. And I see that happen a lot with them. They are very generous. They do a lot of donations and charity work and they help families. And I see that. And yeah, people can take that as they want. They say, "Oh, it's for publicity." I don't care. But you know what? They're doing a good thing. And they do make the efforts into helping and to not just making it all about them. And I see that with a lot, not just like celebrities. I see that with a lot of people who have a lot of money. And I mean, to me, I don't ever look at someone and think, "Oh, wow, they're wealthy." I don't think that way. It's just not my style. But I think it is really cool to have that perspective of when you do have that circumstance and that you're blessed in that situation, you have the ability to help more people. And that's kind of a positive outlook on it.
I love that they do all that too. And, looking at it from a positive, it's just like you said earlier, being able to look at things in a positive way and
Mhm.
see how they are giving back and how they are helping. Yeah, there's the reality side and there's so much other stuff to it too, but looking
Mhm.
at it in a positive way. And I think it's a really fun show to watch. And we have
It's
something to
great.
talk about. Yeah,
I
it's fun
mean,
to talk
people
about
watch
too.
shows
That's
I
what,
don't watch all the time, and it's like, I don't
yeah.
judge you. Don't judge me. Go judge something else. Like, it's worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, back to a serious note. I feel like something else that we talked about that we both felt like we've learned is you're going to feel lost. Like that's just part of it. You hear so many people in their 20s, in their whenever, different times in everyone's life. But for us, maybe it was more in our 20s. Right now, at least, I feel like we both went through a time where we felt lost and we were like, is this normal? Like, why do we feel like this? And then we came to find that, like, it is normal. Like, people do feel lost. It's not you don't have everything figured out, and you're not supposed to have everything figured out. You're learning, and it's okay to feel lost.
I think that you also will feel lost more than once. I mean, I
Oh,
thought I
yeah,
was
for
on the
sure.
yeah, I was on what I thought was my dream job and working, and then I got fired, and that was wow, such an eye opener. And it put me into the path I'm at now. I mean, and I love what I do. And so it's just like, and it kind of goes in line. Like I was saying, one of the things I said, and I say this lightly because I'm still kind of figuring out what it means, but your job doesn't have to be your passion. Your job does not have to be your dream job. And I think that there's a lot of pressure from people that feel like if they're not doing their dream job, then they're not going to be happy. And I don't think that's always the case because my dream job when I was like in college, before I started like actually working towards my what I thought was my dream job when I got fired, was an event planner. And then I was applying for an internship with a company to help with event planning. And during that whole process, I was like, this doesn't sound anything like I wanted it to be. It sounds really stressful. And like the fun of it was not, and I know every job has some sort of pros and cons, but it was going to take the dream out of the job. And I didn't like that. And so I was like, I'm not going to make this my career because I still want to enjoy it. And I think that there's a lot of stigma that you have to have a dream job and you don't. You don't. Maybe it can just be your hobby. Maybe you can just find something that I don't know, you like to do on the side, but there shouldn't be pressure to pursue a dream job, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think if you feel like you're in your dream job and that changes, that's okay. And I think
Yes,
that's when
that's
a
so
lot of people
true.
start to feel lost is like, "Oh, but
Yeah.
this is what I was supposed to do. I worked hard. I
Yeah.
got here." And then a lot of
Yeah.
people get there and they're like, "Oh no. This is not what I thought it was going to be." Like,
Yeah, did
and it's
that happen to
okay.
you?
Yeah, I was a preschool teacher for 4 years. I loved it. Don't get me wrong. It was amazing. It was so rewarding. I loved it. But I also realized at the end of the day, I was like, I think I want to do something different for a while. And I always said, like, I'll
Yeah.
come back to this maybe later. But I was like, I know I'm going to have my own kids. Like, I want to go into all I had done. I mean, I'd done little other jobs, but like I'd babysat. I worked at a little like gymnastics studio. And then I was a preschool teacher. So I worked with kids my whole life. And then my whole life, it's like, not that I'm that old, but like I worked
Back
with
when I
kids.
was a little
Yeah.
kid, back
Yeah. I worked with kids and I didn't have the experience that now I have doing what I'm doing now because it's a totally different career and I'm so happy that I stepped out of it, but there was a time I felt lost and I really feel like I felt lost when I realized what it looks like to have a passion, I guess. Like when I saw Evan chasing his dreams, I was like, wow, like there's such a different spark in his eye. I want that. And I think that's when I really stepped back from being a preschool teacher and I was like, there's something else out there for me. And maybe this thing is for a little while and maybe this is forever. I don't know. But you have to be I'm okay with things changing as like my life changes because as your life changes, your passions might change and your career might change.
that is you nailed that. I totally agree. That leads into another lesson of comparison and how comparison is the thief of joy. It really can take away from what you have worked towards and have and can basically obliterate it into a million pieces. You don't have to have something or compare your life to someone else, I think. And that's really hard when it comes to like whether if it's a materialistic item or where they're at in life or a job or oh man, they have it so easy or they have such a great life or such a great body. I want that. And that's just like stop it. Stop doing that. And I feel like that's a hard one. I'm still working on that one to this day. Comparison is really hard, especially with social media.
It's so hard, especially when you're doing social media and then everyone's comparing. And, it's something I think me and you have talked so much about is like, hey, I'm feeling this way. And then we talk each other through it. And I think that's helped a lot, at least for me, with comparison, just being like, okay with talking about it with you. And I think comparison can be such a bad thing because it takes away the joy from so many things. I feel like comparison can really bring you down so much and it can also stop you from succeeding because you think, "Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not there." And I think being able to step back and realize everybody's path looks different and you really don't know what's going on behind the scenes at all of other people's lives. And you're comparing to this picture of what you think it looks like, but you don't always know the full picture. And I think that's a huge thing that I've worked really hard on is not comparing. Like, I am who I am. And yeah, you can use people to drive you maybe, but don't let it bring you down.
Mhm. I think you can't
It's not
you
easy though.
said no, no. You say how you don't know everyone's story. Nobody does. And I mean, even when you are living with someone, I think you still may not know, which is hard because you have these internal thoughts and battles and, oh, I should be here, or I should have this, or, I'm not where everyone is. Like right now, Bryce, well, not right now. I think that within the last year, Bryce was really struggling with the idea of not having a house. And, though that wasn't what he deemed that as success to himself, someone owning a house. But I told him, I'm like, according to who? Who deems that as success? And he was like, well, it's just kind of what the American dream is. And I'm like, but you're not even working. Like, what is that? What does that even mean? Like, no. And then I was like, but that's not success, because success, I mean, to him was deeming as having a house and settling down. But then we realized that the lifestyle we're like striving for would not involve that right now. And so he's like,
Yeah, you
yeah,
guys
I
are
never looked at.
traveling so much.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just like trying to figure out what we want, where we want to settle down, and all. It's just
Yeah.
there's so many moving parts to it. And so I'm like, just because people are buying a house does not mean that you're not successful. And he's like, I know that. And it's a perspective. You have to
For
really slow
sure.
down and take the time to change those thoughts you have, and it's not going to happen overnight.
And if you guys were just to settle down and buy a house right away, let's say it was 2 years ago, you guys would have missed out on these experiences because you thought that's what you were supposed to do, but you guys were strong enough to do what you felt was right. And I think that's something I've learned so much from even, like, traveling full time. That is so different. Like, yeah, we could have, just settled down and done that, but we would have missed out on all of this. But a lot of people at our age are, maybe settling down a little more and finding a place they want to be. And Evan and I are like, if you like, I think Haley asks us all the time, she's like, where do you guys want to be after the Olympics? And we're all like, we have an idea, but we don't know exactly. And I think it's so easy to compare and think that's what you're supposed to do, but do what feels right for you because the experiences you're going to get from that are huge.
I learned that anxiety is a form of the fear of losing control. And so when you learn to embrace the change and not compare, literally all these life lessons just being pulled into one, and just realize like you can only plan so far out. Like you really can't. Like you said, I mean, I ask you all the time where you guys want to see just for talks, and you only can know so far in advance. So it's like, at what point are you inhibiting yourself from working on what's happening now in your life and over planning? You can't over plan these things because you just don't know where life can lead. And you could plan it, and then next thing you know, you realize, oh gosh, that did not work out. And that took a complete 180. It's like, oh gosh. And so those moments you have to take a step back and realize, am I trying to control every situation that is not controllable? Am I just going to drive myself insane doing it? Or is this something I'm actually trying to figure out and have a plan for my life? You got to find the balance with them. And that's something I'm also working on.
Definitely. I feel like that's something I've learned so much from how our lifestyle is right now is
Mhm.
I was a big planner. I loved, like I didn't travel like I did. So it was like I planned a trip. I packed 2 weeks before. I was very planned on like does the next 6 months look like? Like I knew. Now I don't even know what we know the first like week of our trip and then that's about it. But it's
You're like
learning to
packing. You're still packed from your last trip, and you're
yeah.
packing for your next because it's all within 48 hours.
Literally. But it's so fun to not have that plan. And yeah, that actually took me work to get to a point where I could just be like, okay, no
Definitely.
plan, let's go for it. And I'm like so not a planner. I know eventually, like when we have kids, that's gonna be so different. You're going to plan. But right now I'm
Yeah.
enjoying that we don't have to plan and that I have a job that gives me the ability to do what we do.
Let's plan to not plan.
But
I
yeah,
like that.
exactly. Okay, another one that we have both feel like we've learned in our 20s is if you don't love yourself, you can't love anyone else. And I think that
Can
is
you
so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, can you explain what you think it means to love yourself?
Yeah, I think it's being happy with who you are, loving who you are, starting to learn who you are. You're going to always be changing and growing, but to really be confident and love yourself, because I think when you're able to do that, other people treat you the same way. But when you aren't in love with who you are, you radiate that or you say stuff and then people don't treat you as good. And I feel like I saw that when I was younger. I would just wasn't as confident in who I was. I was still growing, I was still learning, and I noticed the people around me not treating me as well. And as I grew into myself and I started to love myself and I showed other people like how I deserve to be treated because I loved who I was and I was showing that, people start to treat you that way. And I really do also think loving yourself, you're able to show up in relationships better. Because if you don't love yourself, you're always constantly worried about how you look or how you feel or you don't feel good. There's just so many factors in it that I think when you do truly love yourself, you can love somebody else, because I just don't think you're able to love other people when you don't even know how to love yourself. How do you do that? If you can't love yourself, how do you love somebody else? Like I
So
right? I feel like
how
that's such an interesting one.
it is, and I'm gonna ask you a follow-up question on that. So being able to learn how to accept yourself and appreciate who you are, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think that takes a lot of time. I think negative talk, like talking down on yourself, that's something that isn't really not good. And Haley actually noticed this. Evan is very, very big on not talking down about yourself.
Yes, he
And he
hates
will
it.
call you, yeah, he will call you out on it. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, you guys, like, if
He's
he
like,
says you're
"Stop."
beautiful, or like you say, something, and he'll call Haley out on it. He'll be like, "Haley, what are you saying? Like, don't even say that
It's
about
true. He'll
yourself,"
put me in my place. I'm
because
like, "Thanks, Evan.
but it's
You're a
so true
bro."
because yeah, because the second you start putting that out there, you start to feel that. And if you're like, "I'm so beautiful," like, I think words of affirmation are huge. Waking up and thinking things about yourself and talking positive to yourself. I think there's so many for me, like, going to therapy and learning, like, why am I saying these things? What is that coming from? Like, yeah, there's big work to do, like therapy or, going through things like that, but then there's little things that you can add into your everyday, like, when you are going to say something bad about yourself, instead change it to a positive. Say something positive. Just start to talk really positive about yourself, because you start to see yourself in that light. When you start to talk negative about yourself, you see yourself in that way. It just how your brain works.
I love that you say talk positive about yourself, because when you do that, it will start to manifest itself in your life in more ways than you realize. Because then when you start to talk positive about yourself, you'll start to think that way about other people. And that's where it kind of comes circling back to, then you can't love yourself, and or you can't love other people until you love yourself. And I feel like that is such a very generic term, like phrase, I guess, that we're saying, to love yourself and love other people. Because like I was asking you, it's not just "Oh yeah, I love myself." And I think that the reason it can be hard is because comparison, but then also there's so much out there that if you're confident, or I don't know, you embrace your looks, and you like the way you look, or you feel good about your emotional state, you can come off as cocky or full of yourself. And that's where it can get, people are like, "Well, I don't want to be full of myself or act like I'm cocky." And that's not it. I mean, obviously if you're like, "Yeah, I'm super hot," like,
Yeah, you're not
well,
gonna say it
yeah,
like that. Yeah.
no, like, obviously that's different. But like saying, like, if you look at your outfit and be like, "I like this outfit, this isn't maybe something I would usually wear, but I like it." And you're like, "You know what?" Or for example, this was a huge one I learned in my marriage: high-waisted jeans when they first started becoming a thing X amount of years ago. I mean, the guys were all into low rise. That was the thing. I mean, that was the thing. Hillary Duff rocked the low rise. I will never forget it. But high rise came a thing. And I remember I got my first pair, and Bryce was like, I was like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "Hmm, yeah." And he would never actually be like, "Yuck." Like, he wouldn't do that. He'd just be like, "Those are different." And I'm like, "You hate them?" He's like, "It's just not the style I'd pick for you." And I'm like, "Well, okay." I'm like, "Well, I like them." And so he's like, "Okay, great. If you like it, then that's fine." He now loves them on me because I rock it with confidence, and when I feel good about what I'm wearing. And I'm not saying that when you love yourself, it all comes down to looks. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, that's what, in this situation I'm talking about, that's what it was. It'll reflect on them. And I think that also comes down to having a good relationship.
Talking about what you said, I feel like I thought of this, and I was like, in our friendship, we see this so much. And I think when you love yourself, you're able to be happy for your friend or for somebody else. And I think that is huge. You can uplift your friend. You can be happy for them when they succeed or when something is positive in their life, instead of when you don't love yourself and you're feeling down. I see a lot of times jealousy comes out and then you tear the other person down because you're not able to be happy for them because you're not happy with yourself. And I think
Jealousy is
that
a huge
shows a
thing that
lot.
comes out. People will put their own insecurities on other people when they're not
Exactly. That's a good
confident in
way.
themselves. And I think
Yeah,
that's
I like you said that.
that's exactly it. What's one thing you would never change about yourself?
I think my willingness to put myself in uncomfortable situations and grow. Like, I'm very proud that proud of myself for pushing myself into things that I'm not comfortable with. And I feel like that's something I wouldn't change about myself because I feel like that's making me who I am, even though it scares me to do that.
I love that. I love this question because I think we often hear, "What's the one thing you could change about yourself?" And that's a perspective thing. It's like, it's like why are we now focusing our energy into having something that we're insecure about, and then we would change? Not to say you can't talk about it, but I just like that we don't ask that question. What's one thing you never change? And I like that you said that your energy to like grow and put yourself out there. I think you are a really good example of doing that, and it's truly inspiring.
Thank you. What was
You're
something you
welcome.
would never change about yourself?
My first thing that came to my mind, I think, is my ability to not hold grudges, but then also laugh and humor. I love my sense of humor and just being able to, and I also forgive easily, which can be kind of a burden sometimes, but I'm very quick to forgive just because when it's someone I care about and I can tell if they're genuinely like, I don't know if they've wronged or done something wrong, I'm quick to accept people and love them because we're human and we all make mistakes. And I've a great example, like I look back at the mistakes I've made and I'm like, I wish people could have that natural instinct that I do, but unfortunately not everyone has that. And sometimes that can be a boundary for them and I have to respect that. But it definitely is something I think I really like about myself, the ability to not hold grudges and also have a sense of humor.
I love that. Something I feel like you really showed me, and I really love this about you, is how much you care for the people around you and the people that are in your life. And I feel like you have showed me how to even be a better friend in some ways by showing me different ways that you can show like how important somebody is in your life. So I feel like that. On a like sappy note.
Gotta have some sort of saps, you know? That's good. Well, that's funny because I was just telling Bryce the other day that I'm like, I wish I didn't care so much. Like I hate it. It can be kind of exhausting because it gets me upset easily or in situations where I'm like
Like us when we
overthinking.
both called each other. We didn't talk for like when I mean we didn't talk, we still texted. We didn't like FaceTime for like 2 days. And then I got on the phone, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were mad at me." And Bryce in the background's like, "Wow, you guys are the same person. You both thought you were mad at each other for no reason." And I was like, "Well, we've both been hurt so bad
Literally.
in our past. We both jump to that
Yeah.
because we're so used to people hurting us that that's just where our brain goes. Yeah, we'll eventually get over it. But we're like, okay, glad we can say that to each other so we can get over that because it's silly."
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, okay, just because we're not like communicating 24/7 does not mean that we, and I think this is going to be a really good test for us, like, and like to be able to put our insecurities of the past to the side as we do have to focus on this time change we're about to, endure on. And I think with life, that's something, coming back to the lessons we've learned in our 20s is that you're going to be put in situations that are going to force you to grow, whether you want them or not. Like, of course, I would much rather you stay back in the United States. Absolutely. Especially because I'm going to be like, Bailey, I'm going to be in your area for like a month. And it's so unfortunate. But you know what? That's not what life is for us right now. That's not what we need to go through and learn. And I think that this is going to be a really fun and exciting time, not just for you and me, but individually feel to learn how to become more confident, and then we'll be able to circle back and make a podcast about
Exactly.
it.
Podcast coming soon about this topic.
For distance is rough, and it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Relationship or friendship, it's hard. But you know what? If someone's
I
willing to
think
put
it
the
puts
efforts in,
That's what I was gonna say. I think it's a really good test and it's not a forever thing. And I mean, maybe, like maybe we don't live in the same state, but I think for the most part, a lot of times it's not a forever thing. And I think a lot of times it shows true friends. and true relationships, because it's not easy. And I think when it's not easy, I always say that even when, like, in a relationship, like with a significant other, I think it's good to go through those hard things like distance, because it shows that it doesn't only work when it's easy. It works when it's not convenient, when it's hard, when things are just not easy. And I think that's really, really important to know.
All right. At the end of every episode, we ask you, how can you unleash yourself? So think about the lessons you've learned in your life in the last 10 years of your life. So whether 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever age you're at right now, just kind of reflect back and let us know. Share them, and we'll love to discuss these topics with you and hear where you've grown, what you've learned the most. And if there's something we've talked about, let us know. Do you like watching the Kardashians? Out of all the things we talked about, that is the most important one. But yeah, please just let us know. Comment on this. We have Instagram too, and we also do go live after most of our episodes. This summer will get a little interesting just because of the international travels, but we'll definitely keep you updated. So be sure you're following along on our Instagram.
Our Instagram is unleash.club. Definitely make sure you're following along because we do a lot of updates on there. Thank you so much for listening today. We can't wait for our next episode.